Just recently in South Africa, we've heard that we are in the 5 top countries in the world when it comes to children living in continuous trauma.
The last rape count, 40% of all people who were reported rape were 12 years and younger.
55% of South Africans are living in poverty. Who's picking that up? Who's looking after the families?
Hi, my name is Linda Rowett and I worked alongside Chantal Philander for the first 8 years of the formation of Philippi Trust South Africa, and now I serve as a board member with Philippi Trust International. South Africa is a multicultural society facing psychosocial challenges in all sectors within the community. Poverty, sexual and physical violence, discrimination and extreme behaviours are increasingly evident in all sectors. However, it is not a hopeless situation.
So in South Africa, we've got the non-profit sector, CBOs, which are community-based organizations, and then the others who are known internationally as the NGOs. They're non-governmental organizations. In the space where South Africa is now, we still need a lot of development in the old space, and NGOs are the best to provide that. We know that if you give them access to funding, if you give them access to knowledge and to skills, that they are actually able to find solutions for local problems. And I think that is what counts.
One of these NGO charities working at ground level in the community is Philippi Trust South Africa. Chantal Philander is the co-founder and director of the charity and is also involved in training and counselling.
Quite recently in one meeting where NGOs come together out of peer frustration about how we can address the need of children in our communities, just the realization is that our social workers are overworked and there's not enough social workers for the current need to address the issue.
I think I need to point out that South African NGOs are in crisis in South Africa at this stage. We are still facing the crisis, believe it or not, where we are termed as a middle-income country, and therefore international funders are still shy in investing in South Africa. With that point of view, I work under domestic violence and abuse, rape in South Africa. Women's rights, it's still under threat. So domestic violence and abuse is quite rough. People say 1 in 4, which is like a world standard, but we know 1 in 3 women are in an abusive relationship in South Africa. And that the last rape count, 40% of all people who were reported rape were 12 years and younger.
We always had a problem with domestic violence, making kids quite vulnerable. We are a very angry nation. There's a lot of pain, there's a lot of frustration, and all of that has become a melting pot for a lot of violent behavior. Philippi Trust's overall goal is to work in the whole area of counselling and counselling training and we bring lay counselling training to the local church and to the communities.
Breakfast can only taste this good when you have it with friends. Breakfast with Friends.
Now in studio with us this morning, Chantal, thank you so much for coming through to our studios to tell us more about the Philippi Trust. Let's start off with the basics. What is the Philippi Trust all about?
Philippi Trust is a counselling training organisation, a Christian counselling training organisation. We've been established in 1999. Our work is training communities, churches in the whole area of lay counselling. The reason we are so passionate about lay counselling, there's not enough psychologists, and psychologists, they are expensive, most of them in it. If you think about, you pay 750 Rand per hour for a session to go and see a psychologist. How many of our people can really afford that? If you think about the latest stats that's coming out saying that 55% of South Africans are living in poverty. And there's such a big need. If you think about the crisis situations that we have in South Africa around women abuse, child abuse, just think of the knock-on effect on the extended family and the whole families around it. Who's picking that up in it? Who's looking after the families? And most of that happens sometimes in our poorer communities where they don't have resources. Philippi Trust is one of the organizations that comes alongside training churches and communities.
Our aim at Philippi Trust is to help people find peace with themselves, with God, and with others. We do this through working with churches and communities to provide resources to bring healing and lasting change. This is achieved through counselling and creating safe places and encouraging people to express themselves and connect with those around them.
Sometimes we do heal in communities. We don't heal in isolation. Isolation just brings more despair.
A valued and loved member and trainer within the Philippi staff is Nomo Mbusi, who runs a youth group within her own community, Zola.
I'm Noma and this is my youth group. This is a two-bedroom house with a small dining room and a small kitchen and one bathroom. That's where I live with my family. We are all sharing. We're a family of 6 in this house.
6 people live in this house. Wow.
That's what life brings to us. But yeah, we're sharing because we need to be in one place as a family and we need to be united. This is my grandchild, Yazi. The community we lived in is Asana village, but we normally call it Zola. In our communities, there is a need for us to be there and to be available whenever they need us. For me, Philippi is like a seed that is growing. And whenever, even if I'm sleeping, I dream of Philippi growing because it's like a seed that has been planted and it needs to grow day by day.
What can Philippi offer in our communities and in your community?
Firstly, there are safe places for the kids and women because there's a need for that in our communities. And secondly, the trainings that Philippi offers and also the counselling because the people are facing challenges each and every day. Child abuse, drug abuse, domestic violence. We need counsellors to stand up and do their job so that people stop what they're doing. And those that has been hurt, they need to be healed. They need counselling, they need trainings, they need to be empowered.
My name is Janet Nicol. For the past 16, 17 years, I've been a graduate of Philippi Trust as one of their counsellors, and it's been a very rewarding and awesome role to have in my life. The most important part of the counselling for me is watching people heal, go from pain and hurt and heal, to provide a safe, secure place for them so that they can cry or they can shout or scream, whatever they have to do to get the tension out, but also to be listened to, because for many people it's the first time someone's actually sat and heard what they have to say.
In Eastern Cape, most of people that are working in the field of counselling are not well trained. So my vision is to train more counsellors and to equip them and empower them. So my aim, I wanted to upskill people in that area. What I wanted Philippi Trust to get exposed to and help out in the Eastern Cape is to implement and train more people so that they get equipped and so that they can stand for themselves.
I think what stood out the most was when I did the adult survivors of sexual abuse, and I was privileged to have Malcolm Wolseley training me. Malcolm Wolseley, as a lot of you may know or not know, was the founder of Philippi Trust. He has an amazing autobiography out explaining his early life. He was a convict, he was in prison, he ended up becoming a priest in the Anglican Church and an amazing counsellor.
The history of the charity begins in 1989 in the UK when Reverend Malcolm Worsley established Philippi Trust in order to offer a professional level of Christian counselling and Christian counselling training courses. He was invited to offer this training in various other countries as well, including Germany, Guernsey, Belgium, Namibia and South Africa. This eventually led to the formation of the charity Philippi Trust International, which is an accountability body for all the different branches. In 1999, Philippi Trust South Africa was registered as a charity with the intention of offering counselling and courses that were pertinent in a local context. This led to the expansion of courses to include HIV/AIDS counselling and support groups, and OVC, which is Orphans and Vulnerable Children, plus a diploma course. Today, as of 2018, Philippi Trust offers accredited counselling courses in listening, Level 1 and Level 2, plus specialist courses in compulsions and dependencies, adult survivors of child abuse, HIV/AIDS counselling and HIV/AIDS support groups, and succession planning.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back into this space. I brought my little toy with me. It's a very important person in my life, and it's an elephant. And we're going to use this alley to do checking, because in this room we talk about the elephant in the room.
My name is Sikelela Dlamini. I'm a facilitator for Philippi Trust, and I help with the organizing of the trainings and facilitating the trainings. And counseling. I'm a psychologist by training, and I've also got an honors degree in theology. So my background makes it easy for me to have a unique perspective to the healing of the soul. The workshops that we had, especially with Professor Lowe, made it a lot easier to understand God is not a prescriptive God, but is a relational God. So as long as your focus is building relationships and improving relationships, then you're on the right path. And that seems to be the value that Philippi Trust puts ahead above everything, building relationships and healing spaces.
At school, like when I did the counselling training at UNISA, it was not Christian counselling. So what attracted me in Philippi counselling is that there's Christian counselling. So I add up and I managed to do both because of the trainings that I got from Philippi Trust, and the trainings that I got from Philippi Trust did empower me and make me stronger than before. And even on my faith base, I felt very strong because I know where am I going.
The training is a lot of training I get. They mean a lot to me too, because they instilled me and they open a lot of doors for me. It's a lot I get from Philippi Trust.
I've been privileged to have the Trust support me in terms of the other activities that I do, presenting Christ to schools from a different perspective. One of the schools has decided to partner with us on a long-term basis in terms of training the teachers. Our relationship with them has built into the classes, whereby we've got children struggling with drug issues. They're coming to class drunk. So because of the background that I have when it comes to working with schools and education, we've been given an official slot in the class. So within the syllabus of life orientation, we get to minister to these kids. We get to plant Christian principles and get them to deal with the challenges that they face at a more practical level.
My name is Bukelwa Mahlati. In Philippi Trust, I'm trainer to level 1 with HIV and AIDS. Into endiyibonileyo engathi ndiyigainile kukuthi ndazi ukuthi yintoni i-HIV, i-HIV ndingayivikela kanjani okanye ibiyintoni bendingayazi, nditsho ndafumana ulwazi lwayo lwentsholongwane ukuthi iqala ii-symptoms zayo. Ndicinga into yoba ndingazama ukulispreda ebantwini, for special ulutsha.
On a personal level, I had the privilege of attending the workshops with my wife, which shaped and changed our perception of who God is. It helped us to move God from a God who's out there judgmental to a place whereby we're having a personal God who's concerned about who we are.
Into endinothi iyanditsala kule organization, ndifumane ulwazi oluphangaleleyo. Into enditsalayo ukuthi ndize ndikwazi ukuthi olu lwazi lam ndifuna ukuba ndifome ii-groups for ulutsha lwangaphandle. Luye landinceda mna.
To qualify as a level 2 lay counsellor, you have to get a certain amount of hours in, and I was fortunate enough to do it at the DP Murray Hospital, which is a TB hospital. A lot of the symptoms for TB are very similar to the initial symptoms of HIV. So a lot of the time we were dealing with people who had a short lifespan left, and it was getting them to come to terms and realize that every day is important. Because I put in so many hours at the TB hospital, and because the bulk of the people I counselled were on a short lifespan, it helped me come to terms about death and how important it is to lead our lives. I then started leading a support group for 7 years, and at the start of it, I was diagnosed with cancer. It's part of the leukemia family, which then led to diabetes and osteoporosis as well. And I really believe if I hadn't had the training as a counsellor at Philippi, I wouldn't have been as accepting as it was, knowing that God was walking the road with me. And so what I had spoken into other people's lives, I was able to speak into my life thanks to the training I had. I'm not running a support group now, but I am counselling a lot of people either from the church or from outside the church. And there's been a new learning curve again. In counselling, there's always a new learning curve. And I actually commented to my husband the other day, thank goodness for the training I got, because it's actually standing me in such good stead and has done over the past 17 years. So if anyone has a heart for hurting people and wants to help in any way, I'd highly recommend you contact Philippi Trust and get involved in some of their training courses.
I did initial training with Philippi Trust at the end of 2002. The learning took place on a whole lot of different levels. I loved the fact that it was practical, that we were doing supervised counselling just about from the word go. And then at the beginning of 2012, I had the opportunity to train with resilient kids. For me, the experiential learning really was a turning point.
When we started training adults how to work with vulnerable children, I realized that there were many adults in that space who were hurting themselves. They'd never told their stories. They'd never had anyone care about the trauma they'd faced or the pain that they had experienced as children. I became really passionate around seeing these two projects working together to address these situations. So Resilient Kids working at helping adults look at the children's pain, but Philippi Trust addressing the adults and their pain. And as we go into these communities, these two projects together can get a well-rounded support in communities.
I have worked exclusively with adults, not with children, but all the principles of resilience that apply to orphans and vulnerable children apply equally to the orphan and vulnerable child inside an adult.
It's quite important to understand the link between the two organizations in it. Philippi Trust had a work that we call psychosocial support for orphans and vulnerable children, and Resilient Kids grew out of that.
So in 2005, when I started getting involved with Philippi Trust around the OVC program, as it was called back then. The OVC stands for the Orphaned and Vulnerable Child, and that was the terminology that everybody used to refer to children that were at that time mostly infected and affected by HIV. We started to realize as we started working with the training and that OVC wasn't a term we really wanted to use for children, because we really believe that if you label a child in that way, to define yourself as an orphan or a vulnerable child, to have that starting point is not a good one. It doesn't set you up to succeed. And so we started playing around with the words and then came up with the word resilient children. A resilient child could be going through really bad stuff, but they can still feel like somebody believes in me. I am someone who can do great things. I am amazing. I'm loved. I'm special. And with Resilient Kids, we developed the training around that so that children's self-image could be increased, that they could become resilient. And we started realizing in South Africa that all children are vulnerable in some way. It doesn't matter how rich or how poor they are, where they come from, which side of the railway line, sorry, that's a South African thing, which side of the railway line they live, that children all need adults. Every single child alive today needs a caring adult. We decided to look specifically at the psychosocial support of children, because in the field back then there was a lot of work around feeding children and making sure they were clothed and they had housing, but very few people were speaking into the child's need for family, the child's need for relationships, the child's need to express the emotion of the really hard stuff they were going through.
Resilient Kids offers training for facilitators within churches and communities, and the practical outworking of kids clubs, youth groups, and ongoing support for vulnerable children.
Are you guys ready? As julle gereed? What do you enjoy the most about kids club? Kids club.
The reason I am here, I want to worship God more and I want to learn about God.
We love Kids Club.
My name is Precious Ndangwa. I live in Fisandegrau. My first training was in 2010 because I was involved with the youth, doing some stuff with the girls, but I realized there was some stuff that I needed to deal, like that was happening in me, so that I can be able to work with those girls in a clean slate. It changed a lot, because if it was like maybe 7 years or 8 years back, I wouldn't be like talking to you smiling. I don't know, I was just this person who was really reserved with a lot of issues that I didn't deal with. But after that, I managed to go into all that process of grieving, of letting the past be in the past and be able to be me, Precious, and be able to own my name. Before, I didn't even know like my life was going to be okay. I was in a dark shadow, but after the resilience, it opened up a lot of things. I can be able to do stuff and be a better person. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be the way I am today, like a happy person, free and just being me. It really impacted my family life. Like now, me and my husband were like best friends, and me and my kids, we talk about everything, anything. And I don't have to be this typical Zimbabwean woman who has rules, like I want my kids to grow up like this, to do this. I want them to have a voice and to be able to be themselves, because some of the parents around here in our community, they don't have time to be able to discover who their kids are or to give them space to be who they are. But if they do the training, they can also solve issues in their own lives and be able to discover who they are, for them to be able to motivate and see their kids being kids.
My name's Barbara Clark. I work with Resilient Kids and Mercy AIDS, and here in Fisantekraal, Mercy AIDS runs kids clubs. We have children from 6 up, though on a Saturday we sometimes have younger children. The aim is to help the children develop their positive understanding of who they are and their ability to control what's going on inside of them, and that starts with being allowed to feel and being allowed to have the stuff going on inside of them. We do that through play and through teaching and through discussion, and just as we go, that's what we do. We have 2 rules for Kids Club. So you're here to have fun and to be fun to be with. Now, having fun's easy, but the being fun is where, okay, my behavior impacts on other children's behavior. My attitude impacts on other children's attitude. And if you're controlling your emotions, they're not controlling you, you can make better choices.
Why do I do Kids Club? At first, I didn't even know myself, like, why am I doing this? But just seeing these kids like running around, just free, it made me realize, like, I can be that. That's why every time if anyone asks me, like, Precious, what do you want to be when you grow up? I know I'm already grown up, but I want to be like a kid, just free-spirited, have nothing to worry about. In that moment when you're playing, you just focus on what you're doing. You don't even think about the stress at home, being a mother, being a wife, all that. You just be in there, just be free and do whatever you want to do.
My name is Ryan, and I'm part of Kids Club here.
What do you like about Kids Club?
The songs and how the children listen to the stories. Like when David defeated Goliath, he told me that you are never too young to achieve faith in your life. It's good being here at Kids Club, and there's a lot of children who's coming, and the Kids Club is very good for children. It inspires children to do better in their lives.
All children everywhere are vulnerable just because they're children, and all children need adults, but because of the violence in the community, the unemployment, the poverty, there are levels of vulnerability that these kids would face that kids in other communities might not face. The kids don't really get to be who they are, and they don't really get to deal with emotions and discover stuff and try stuff, and we try and provide space for that. So at the moment our theme is I am loved, because we tell them that Jesus loves them completely. A lot of the songs we sing are about mending broken hearts. I mean, these kids know what it is to feel pain. Many of them are bullied. Many of them are lonely. You know, they have TVs and they see this life and they don't have it. And they don't always see a way out. The one thing that I think that our kids don't often get is they never get out of the community. Just because it's always been like that doesn't mean it always has to be like that. And for me, in Revelation, where Jesus says, I'm making all things new, that is the thing that I hang on to, because Jesus is making all things new.
It is worth it because I stay in this community. I see these kids every day. They behave differently with other kids. They do selfless jobs here in this community. So it is worth it.
For me, this is my community. This is where I live, work, love, and cry. Sometimes. I've been here long enough to see families change, to see kids impacted, to see teenagers who were in our kids club now beginning to really fly. I want to work with these kids for the adults that they're going to be, and for the kids that they are now. That's why I do what I do.
Going forward in the future, what we really hope to see with Philippi Trust and Resilient Kids is to have interventions that we could easily give to churches or give to schools or give to any institution actually that wants to create a space for people to heal. I think our passion in both organizations is healing, is spaces where people can come and be who they are and experience some kind of transformation inside of their lives that would provide an opportunity for people to start on their journey to wholeness.
I think that where we're going to see the change in the NPO sector is again the revolution of community-based projects, where people are really working on the ground and no more just worried about national issues, across, but rather to focus on their own communities. And I think that again will be strengthened.
Mna ezingcebisweni zam kwi-community into endicingayo ukuthi didibane ne-youth sakhe ii-groups for ukustopha ubundlobongela, for ukustopha i-crime ekuhlaleni. Ndicinga into yoba xa ndinothi ndithagethe abantu abatsha apha elutsheni ingathi loo nto ingasebenza ngoba lulutsha olu luba sengxakini amaxesha amanintsi. Ndicinga into yoba bangayithakazela kodwa andizukuba ndedwa. Khona abantu endizawuthi ndidibane nabo then ukuthi sifomishe le group.
If somebody comes into you and say, Precious, Barbara, we see the work that you're doing. We want to fund. What would you like us to fund?
There's a whole lot of stuff, because like now we have boys that likes to play soccer. It would be nice for them to have soccer balls and to have more hula hoops, blankets, colors, crayons, yeah, a whole lot of stuff. It will make an impact for those kids.
If somebody was going to give me a blank check, I would like funding to train parents in resilience building. Obviously equipment, balls and hoops and that kind of thing. And then occasional educational type stuff. A trip up Table Mountain or a trip to the city, to do a walking tour or something. Anything like that, anything that shows the kids the history and gets them to see outside of Santa Croix. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh Lord, please Lord, oh Lord, my dear God, oh Lord, please Lord, oh Lord, my dear.
My dream is to see Philippi expanding to all the communities and all over Africa. The continent needs counselors.
In every community there's a vulnerable child, and every community can benefit from the training of understanding how do you help that child rise up one day to be able to say, I am worth loving and I can do amazing things with my life. It doesn't matter where they start, but their stories at the end could be great. And that's our heart.
It would be a dream to think of a South Africa that enjoyed peace and harmony, where children felt safe and men and women respected and valued each other. We believe Philippi Trust and Resilient Kids are working towards this goal and need all your financial support, prayers and encouragement in order to reach it.
All areas of South Africa need counselors, and we will take it there. And slowly but surely we will get there as Philippi Trust together. Thank you.